Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the John Campea podcast on this glorious Tuesday here in Burbank, California. It's actually not overheating us terribly today. I'm so glad and honored you guys decided. For those of you who are joining me live right now, letting you know if you're watching this after fact, I had a bunch of people asking me to try doing the John Campea podcast live for the next week or two. I'm testing it out, doing it live, see how well it goes. I have had some technical problems for a bunch of you guys who watched this show live yesterday. You know, we had some problems with the audio and the issues, but we got those all fixed. Everything seems to be working right now. And away we go. Now, you also notice I'm not wearing the gunner glasses today. Had a few people complaining that the reflection of the monitors and the lights was distracting. I can't promise I'm not going to wear them in the future, but I am going to try it today because, like I said, I got a 34-inch monitor, two 27-inch monitors, and the monitor light just eventually gives me a headache after a while. But I'm going to try it without it just because you guys have asked me to. So here's how today's show is going to run. Down in the description, you see that I have picked out... I've picked out their 6 questions that you guys have emailed into me. How do you get an email question to me? It's simple. You email me at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. That's thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. Send in your questions. I pick out 6 every day. You can see the 6 questions I got picked out below, including one that I'm sure is going to be a hot button topic, which is kind of putting out there what I believe are the top 10 comic book films ever made. And we'll get to that in a little bit. There's some great questions that came in here today. I want to encourage you guys who are watching this live in the chat board. Prove the world wrong that not all YouTubers are a bunch of moronic, idiotic trolls, that people who use YouTube are actually capable of intelligent thought and having disagreement and some good discussion and debate without, degrading to putting labels on people and name calling, because only fucking 4-year-olds do that. So let's try to be above that in there. And I've been amazed how good the chat board has been actually for the last week. I can't believe it, because normally, YouTube chat boards are like attraction to venom and snake bites. But anyway, you guys have been great. So let's move on to the first question today. And the first question today, and before I get to that, I'm going to do the 6 questions, and then I'm going to save some time and go to the live chat board and see if I can pick out some questions that you guys have from the chat board. So everybody's saying good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. And here we go. The first question today comes to us from Jeff Dyer, who writes, I agree with you when you said that studios shouldn't tailor fit a movie for a specific actor. You actually use the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Hercules example, which I actually liked. But my question is about the proposed Black Adam movie starring, coincidentally, Dwayne Johnson. Don't you think a solo Black Adam movie is an example of just what you're talking about? The character has never really been that significant and doesn't work well without Captain America / Shazam as a counterpoint. Well, there are a couple things to keep in mind here. For those of you who don't know what Jeff is talking about, the other day, I think a question about a possible Lando movie came out. And I said, one of the things that I really don't like is when a studio, instead of starting with their good story and then trying to put cast that best fit the story, they start with, oh, hey, we've got this cast member. Let's build a movie around him. I don't like that. So the question that Jeff's asking is a legit one, saying, well, this whole Black Adam thing, aren't they just building this around so it can be a Shazam or a Black Adam with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? And I actually don't think it is. Okay, let's look at this for a second. The history of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Black Adam goes back years. They announced years ago that a Shazam movie was forthcoming. Dwayne Johnson was going to play Black Adam and all that kind of stuff. Now, clearly, in the years since, their plans changed. They had a change of plans of when and what they were going to do with Shazam, clearly. And if you read the New 52, they actually, Jeff Johns actually did a whole bunch of new stuff with Black Adam. I mean, some stuff was very much borrowed from Black Adam's original origins, but he really kind of breathed fresh life into Black Adam. And Black Adam is actually a very complex character. Black Adam has been a member of the Justice Society, and he's been a member of villainous leagues too. I mean, he's been good guy, bad guy. I mean, he's been a part of the Sinestro Corps. He's been this, he's been that. He's the leader of a nation. They turned Black Adam into a very complex, deep character. And I would make the argument that if you understand a lot about Black Adam, you know that especially in the last couple of years, a lot of the story of Black Adam is completely divorced from Shazam. like is completely divorced from Shazam. And this is Shazam and Black Adam isn't a situation like, Doctor Doom and Reed Richards, they were friends into this, or Magneto and Charles, they were friends at one point and blah, blah, or any of that kind of stuff. Black Adam became Black Adam like millennia before Shazam ever came around, or a long time. So like his character is really completely divorced from Shazam's character in many, many ways, other than the fact that they both say Shazam, they got the lightning bolt down there. Yes, all that kind of stuff. But the way they've used Black Adam has been, quite honestly, very much on his own 2 feet. And if you understand that about the character of Black Adam, which Dwayne Johnson does, which is actually why Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson chose to play Black Adam instead of Shazam, then you can completely see why they want to do a standalone thing with him. Because it's not like the Joker and Batman, where you can't have the Joker in a different, like, it's different. It really is different. So I actually don't personally look at the Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam thing as that same situation as Donald Glover maybe getting a Lando spinoff movie. I don't really see it as that. I think the evidence we have in front of us, looking at the amount of time that has passed, how their plans have changed and all that kind of stuff, and the way Black Adam has been used, I think it does set up for a legit standalone movie. Now, when they move ahead with this, how they're going to do it and whether or not they'll do it right, those are all questions we'll have to ask later. But I personally think the idea of doing a Black Adam movie is actually pretty killer, and I like what they're going to do with it. All right, let's go on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from JP Hodge, who writes, could one of the reasons that Disney might not cast recognizable names for their live-action movies is because they are diligently trying to find actors and actresses that most resemble their character's likeness from the animated movies? No more Emma Watson / Justin Bieber lookalikes. Also, maybe why it took so long to cast Aladdin? Again, with the relative name, while passing on Dev Patel. No, I don't think so. I really don't think so. I disagree with that idea and that principle. I don't think, first of all, I don't think there's any point in going out and make sure that the live action actor looks just like the animated character. I see no value in that. None. No value whatsoever. Michael Fassbender has been one of the greatest actors to play a comic book role in playing his version of Magneto. Looks nothing like the comic book issue. Has nothing to do with it. Hugh Jackman, everybody complained, looks nothing like Wolverine when they first cast him. A lot of complaints. Why are you getting a Broadway singer and dancer to play Wolverine? Hey, it was understandable that people were a little bit nervous. Had nothing to do with it. Had absolutely nothing to do with how good or how badly he could come in there and play the role. It really, if Disney would be stupid if they started saying, oh, our top priority has to be somebody who looks like that animated character. I just don't see any value in that. Get the best performer for the job. Get the best performer for the job. Now, one of the things Disney did say is that they wanted to try to make a concerted effort, especially with Aladdin, to try to get a new face. They wanted a new face to come in and have nobody associate that face with any other character but Aladdin. And I could get that. So they went out and then, they cast some people. They went out, they got Will Smith to be Genie, which I was like everybody else. I was put off by that at first, but the more I think about it, I actually kind of think the Will Smith casting as a genie was probably a stroke of genius. I think that's going to work out really well. You got Naomi Scott, who of course is in the Power Rangers movie. I think she's going to be a great Princess Jasmine. And then they went out and got this new dude, Mina Masood, who, by the way, I might be mispronouncing Mina Masood's name because I've only ever read his name. I've never heard somebody say his name, but Mina Masood is how I'm saying his name right now. They went out and they got him. Apparently, he's supposed to be incredibly talented. A lot of casting directors have had their eyes on him for a while. He's not a well-known name, but apparently he's incredibly talented. So I'm all for it. I think the casting looks great. But I would totally think it would be just ridiculous for them to go, oh, well, this person looks a little bit more like Princess Jasmine. So even though Naomi Scott's the better actress and we think will be a better fit for the role, let's go get this other girl because she looks a little bit more like her. The audience won't care. Once the movie starts and we see this actress or this actor is now Princess Jasmine or this actor is Aladdin, that's all they're going to see after the movie. Like the first 30 seconds are on screen, everything else will be gone. Whether they look like the animated character or not will be completely forgotten and nobody will care. So no, I don't think that's the reason why Disney did it. I think Disney had a good reason why they wanted somebody who was new, who was a fresh face, but I don't think it had anything to do with them wanting to make sure they went out and got somebody who looked just like the way they drew Aladdin once. I just don't think that's the case. But anyway, maybe you guys have a different opinion. I'm open to having my mind changed. Jump into the comment section and leave your thoughts. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from CJ Hogan, who writes, "Hi, John. Love the show and so glad to see a fellow Nova Scotian make it big. I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, the Hammer. My question is, do you think it's possible for the Han Solo standalone movie to do poorly at the box office? I know being a Star Wars film may give it a boost, but I really do think average moviegoers may be put off by the idea that it's not Harrison Ford in the role. Thanks again. Love the show." It's funny. I've heard a few people asking that question, like with the drama going on with the Han Solo movie, like Lord Miller directing, they're pulled 80% of the way through shooting the movie. They bring in Ron Howard, which isn't a bad guy to bring in at the last minute. And the fact that we've got Alden Ehrenreich as the new Han Solo, will the general movie-going audience be willing to accept somebody who is not Harrison Ford as the new Han Solo, in this case, Alden Ehrenreich, who is a terrific actor, by the way. And this kind of goes back a little bit to what I was saying before about once the new actor is on screen for 30 seconds, that's it. While they're watching the movie, their minds will adjust. They'll see, okay, this dude is now Harrison Ford, and it'll be fine. Now, when you're asking, will the Han Solo movie do poorly? Well, it depends on what your definition of poorly is. Like, the movie could make $500 million worldwide. And there are going to be people out there who say, Han Solo did poorly. Whereas 1,000 filmmakers out there who could never dream of having a movie make $500 million are going to go, are you fucking kidding me? It made $500 million. Some people are going to say that anything under $1 billion is a failure, which those people clearly have an agenda and have a bias. In this terms, I'll define poorly as, will the Han Solo movie be profitable or will it lose money? It ain't going to lose money. It's not going to lose money. The Han Solo movie will do just fine. It is not going to be $1 billion movie. I mean, I've listened to some Star Wars podcasts, and I love Star Wars podcasts, but I've been listening to some Star Wars themed podcasts where like the pundits are like, it's Han Solo, it's the most beloved character, it's going to be $1 billion film, blah, blah, blah. It is not going to be $1 billion film. I just don't see that happening. Unless something really crazy happens where it's like the best movie of the year and word of mouth gets out that it's the craziest best movie of the year. But just based on it's a Han Solo standalone movie, will that be $1 billion movie? No, it's not going to be $1 billion movie. It doesn't need to be $1 billion movie to be a big success. I probably, without seeing any trailers, and I reserve the right to completely change my mind and change my prediction once we start seeing trailers and we get closer to the movie. But as of right now, I'm going to guess a Han Solo standalone movie in the 620 million worldwide range when it's all said and done. Huge hit film, nowhere near $1 billion film or anything like that. And honestly, I think most of the movie-going audience is going to be perfectly fine with it. I think it's going to be a little bit strange, but once they hear it's a young Han Solo movie, nobody's going to be expecting Harrison Ford to be playing the role. So nobody's going to be expecting that. No one's going to think, well, if they're doing a young Harrison Ford movie, they should have got Harrison Ford. No, they shouldn't have. That would be ridiculous. And I think most of the movie-going audience will understand that. But again, maybe you guys have a different opinion than me. Jump into the comment section, leave your thoughts, and why do you think maybe that is the case? But honestly, I think the Han Solo movie is going to do just fine. Unless, like I said, best movie of the year, maybe it hits $1 billion, or maybe unless the opposite, it's a total disaster of a movie and it sucks and all that kind of stuff, then maybe only makes about $380 million worldwide, in which case it's going to lose the company money, and that's a different story, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Thanks a lot for the question. All right, we move on to the fourth question today, and the fourth question today comes to us from Travis Mitchell, who writes, "Hey, John, love the new show." Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. My question is about the sequel to Bad Moms. I really enjoyed Bad Moms, and I think it's a very underrated comedy. But the sequel is already coming barely a year after the original. Does this worry you? I know it's not exactly a special effects and CGI driven film, but I have to admit the quick turnaround time makes me a little nervous. Love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, Bad Moms is one of those movies. I watched it very late. I was very late to the game, but Bad Moms is one of those movies that did not look good at all. It looked like a total throwaway comedy. And it's actually not bad. It's actually not a bad little comedy. It's actually a pretty good film. So if you haven't had a chance to see Bad Moms, I encourage you to check it out. Of course, there's a sequel coming out. So the question, though, is, with like just over a year in between films, should we be worried? Was this rushed? All that kind of stuff. If this was a Rocket Raccoon movie, or if this was another Guardians of the Galaxy movie, or if this was the Shazam movie, or whatever, and they said less than a year from when they decided to do it to when it's actually going to come out, or just barely over a year between when they decided to do it and when it's going to come out in theaters, is that rushed? In the case of those movies, I would say yes, because there's so much more that needs to go into those movies than goes into a lot of other movies. Bad Moms is actually a very simple movie. From a cinematography, there's no huge set pieces. Most scenes are just basically a couple of actresses on some set with a camera in front of them. That's it. And that's just basically how the movie runs and operates. Understanding that, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to guess no more than 2 months to shoot that movie. No more than 2 months to shoot that movie. Maybe a month or two to write the script. And it's, again, very simple script. If you've got some really funny minds in there who are just trying to make a good, pure comedy, not that difficult to come up with a good comedy script fairly quickly. 2 months to shoot it. And then you've got 4 or 5 months for tons of editing and post-production if you want to be really anal about it. And you're still well within the 1 year range. Like I said, there are many movies that I would say that this would be a worrisome period of time. But as somebody who shot a feature-length film in 10 days once, the idea of 2 months for shooting, couple of months for editing, really, I don't see why. I can't think of an excuse as to why it should take longer than that. So now look, Bad Moms, what's it called? Bad Moms Christmas or something, whatever. The new Bad Moms movie, it could suck. It could be terrible. But if it's terrible, it's going to be terrible because they did a bad job with it. I don't think it's going to be terrible because they rushed it. Because for a film like this, I don't see how we could say it was rushed. It's a pretty simple film to make. All right, thanks a lot for the question. Let's move on to the next question. This one's really interesting. This question comes to us from King BJ, who writes, "Hey John, love the podcast. Thank you very much. My question is, whatever happened to the Richard Pryor biopic?" Yeah, no kidding. Whatever did happen to that Richard Pryor biopic? It was about a year ago in October of last year that the news made the rounds. The press release came out. There was a new Richard Pryor biopic. I believe it was going to be called Is It Something I Said? I think the full name of the movie was Richard Pryor, Is It Something I Said? Something like that. Anyway, so Jay-Z was going to produce, and the Butler director, Lee Daniels, who also wrote and directed a number of episodes of Empire, and he also wrote that one underappreciated Zac Efron film called The Milk Boy or The Mail Boy or something like The Paper Boy. That's it, The Paper Boy. He wrote that as well. So Lee Daniels was on to direct it. And it had Eddie Murphy in the film, had Mike Epps, had Oprah Winfrey, had Kate Hudson, Tracy Morgan was supposed to be in it. They had, so they announced a whole bunch of list of stars. They had the director, they had the producer, everything's announced. But then dead silence. We haven't heard anything. And from what I understand, Lee Daniels is no longer attached to the film. I haven't seen any news releases about that, but from my understanding, Lee Daniels is no longer directing the film. And I also read somewhere, I have somebody double check this for me, but I read somewhere that Brett Ratner might actually be on to direct it now. The X-Men 3 director. Brett Ratner may be on to direct the Richard Pryor story at this point. So honestly, and I have not heard anything about a potential shooting dates for a Richard Pryor movie. I haven't heard anything. So as far as I know, and again, this is only as far as I know, the Richard Pryor biopic is kind of in development hell right now, as far as I know. Look, for all I know, they might start shooting in 2 weeks, but I haven't heard anything about that. All that I've heard is that Lee Daniels is no longer attached to the film, probably due to a scheduling conflict or whatever at this point, because it's taken so long to get this thing going. And I honestly don't even know if the movie's still happening or not. I just don't know. I would love to see a Richard Pryor biopic. Not because I like biopics about celebrities, generally I don't, but the life of Richard Pryor. And the fact that Richard Pryor was a comedian who was so far ahead of his time. He was doing stuff back in his day that was revolutionary. Stuff that today we would say, oh yeah, this is kind of standard comedian stuff. But when he was doing it, it was way ahead of its time. And he was a polarizing figure. He was beloved and hated at the same time. The dude is fascinating. I really want this movie to be done. But as far as the status of where it's at right now, just don't know. All right, guys, let's move on to the final email question of the day, which I'm sure is going to stir a lot of topic and debate. And the question comes to us from James Nituan, who writes, "Hey, John, I'm a big fan of you. Thank you so much. With so many superhero films already released and will be released, I just want to know, what is your top 10 superhero films of all time? Keep up the great work." Well, thanks a lot for the question, James. Top 10s are always really tricky because everybody, when you put a top 10 list together, or a top 5 or even a top 1, everybody will disagree with it. Everybody. Because everybody's top 10 list will look different than everybody else's. That's the beautiful thing about the subjectivity of film. We all have different points of view and different experiences, and we approach these things differently. And that's amazing. I love that. So I just want to put that little preference out there that my list, I'm just going to warn you right now, if you're hoping to see my list be exactly the same as your list, ain't going to happen. If the only reason you're watching this is because you think my list will be exactly the same as your list, stop watching. If all you want to hear is somebody say what you already think, and if all you want to hear is people say things you already believe, then stop watching. Because I've never been about that. I never will be about that. The idea is, as film fans, to share our points of view and our perspectives so we can, enjoy each other and appreciate each other's points of view. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to give this list because I've talked a bit about, I remember when Wonder Woman came out, and I said, I really enjoyed Wonder, had a great time with it, but I don't put Wonder Woman in that upper echelon of the best of the best. I have it in that next tier down of the really good comic book movies. That tier that has a place for movies like Doctor Strange, that has a place for movies like X-Men First Class, that has a place for movies like Ant-Man, like really good comic book movies, but just not in that upper Mount Rushmore, upper echelon of the greatest comic book movies of all time. Now, again, I'm going to have films on this list that you're going to agree with. I'm going to have many films on this list you're going to disagree with, but let's just get to it. So I'm also going to let you know right now, I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to put this in any kind of order. I'm not going to list them number 10 to number 1. These are in no particular order, okay? So here's what I believe are the 10 films that occupy that upper echelon of the best comic book movies ever made in no particular order, okay? Let me just be clear about that. So let's get started with that. One of the top 10 films, I believe, of all time is also probably the most underrated comic book movie of all time, which is Man of Steel. I have said before, I've taken crap for it, and you know me, I don't give a shit if people like my opinion or not. I believe Man of Steel is a masterpiece of the genre. I believe it is such a beautifully told story and such a wonderful adaptation of the Kryptonian's classic 50s story in a modern context and what Superman and how he interacts with his world would look like today. As a farm boy finding out he's an alien from another world and trying to figure out, where does this put me? With two opposing father figures who both love and adore him and want what's best for him, but have completely different ideas about what his place in the world should be. I just thought the story was brilliant. I thought the character was brilliant. I love the way it was put together. It is my favorite Zack Snyder film to date. That and 300 are right up there. But I think Man of Steel is the most underappreciated comic book film of all time. I've got a couple of friends that I've turned them around. They didn't like it at first, and I got them to watch it again with me. And then they go, like John Schnepp was one of them, goes, you know what? This movie's fucking awesome. It's like, you're damn right it's awesome. Anyway, so Man of Steel belongs on the list. So that's in the top 10. The next film that I put in the top 10 is from Fox, and that is X-Men Days of Future Past. This movie is flat out frickin' brilliant. Wonderful storytelling, beautiful ways of jumping back and forth between different realities and timelines and things like that without ever losing the audience or making it feel confusing to the audience. Beautiful character development, wonderful use of the dialogue. It is an incredible movie. And one of the movies that I hold up as the poster child about no, comic book movies do not just have to be exactly like the comic book, because X-Men Days of Future Past ain't a hell of a lot like the comic book. It's very different, took a lot of liberties. It did adaptation to give us the best movie possible. So yes, X-Men Days of Future Past is in that upper echelon for me in the top 10 list. Coming up next, I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, without any debate, the funniest comic book movie ever made, Deadpool. And they announced they were going to do Deadpool, and some people thought, what the hell are they thinking? Nobody's ever heard of Deadpool. It's going to be R-rated. If people are going to get the fourth wall breaking stuff, can it be funny and exciting at the same time? And oh my God, they did it. They made a fun, exciting, giving us one of the most rare things in comic book movies, an on-screen romance that we actually care about. How often does that happen? Hardly ever. And they did all of that, and they just put it into an incredible package, and everybody across demographics loved it. My mother loved it. Your grandmother probably loved it, and my little cousin loved it. I mean, everybody loved Deadpool. So for that, breaking so much ground, Deadpool's up there. Okay, so far, the 3 films I got in the top 10, again, in no particular order, we got Man of Steel, X-Men Days of Future Past, and we got Deadpool. The next film coming up on the list, no surprise at all, we got Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Some people, many people consider this to be the best comic book movie of all time. I think it belongs in that conversation. I don't put it as the number one, but it's definitely up there. It did such a great job. What Christopher Nolan did was he smashed through the concept of the comic book genre. Even just the concept of the comic book genre. The comic book movies are supposed to be this way. And Christopher Nolan stepped outside of that and gave us like a different movie-going experience that I think caught the world by storm. And of course, Heath Ledger won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And there's a bunch of people out there who goes, oh, he only won because he died. No, he didn't. He was going to win that award. He just was. Because he was just that good in it. And he gave us probably the greatest on-screen villain in comic book history with the Joker with that film. It was a crime film and a comic book film at the same time. The level of genius of The Dark Knight can just not be overstated. Now that leads us into the other film that is in that debate and discussion as the greatest comic book film of all time, and that's The Avengers. Several polls I've done, and we even did a big March Movie Madness once based on comic book superhero movies, and, no surprise, when you go through all the polls, what it came down to was Dark Knight and The Avengers. From my perspective, I have The Avengers I know none of these movies are in order, but I will tell you that I think The Avengers is the greatest comic book movie ever made, with Dark Knight as a close second. Many people have it the other way around, and that's totally fine. That's cool. But to me, it's undisputed that these are the two. These are the two films. Now, everybody has different opinions. I'm sure a lot of people don't think Dark Knight belongs up there. A lot of people don't think The Avengers belongs up there. That's fine. But every time I've done a poll with film fans, those are the two films it always comes down to. That's why both of these films belong in the top 10. Okay, so we've got 5 down out of the way. We got Man of Steel, we got X-Men Days of Future Past, we got Deadpool, we got Dark Knight, we got Avengers. 5 more films in that upper echelon there. And I'm going to go with another one with our friend Captain America and Iron Man both. Civil War. People were floored by this movie, justifiably so. The first film to really give us teams of superheroes versus other teams of superheroes. And you know what? Even without the airport scene, it's one of the greatest comic book movies I've ever made. With the airport scene, you've got an argument that maybe Civil War should be in the top 3 of all time. That airport scene is definitely in the top 2 or 3 greatest scenes ever in comic book movies. I mean, it was just mind-blowing. You can go back and watch it today, and it's just incredible. Making the Captain America films, one of those series of films you got to have in the discussion when you're talking about the top 5, maybe greatest trilogies of all time. Maybe you got to talk about the Captain America one. And speaking of Captain America, the next film in my top 10 list is also a Captain America film, Captain America Winter Soldier. Matter of fact, there are a bunch of people out there who think Winter Soldier is even better than Civil War. I mean, that's how good Winter Soldier is. There are a bunch of people out there, legit people, who would even put Winter Soldier above Civil War. Again, it was a movie that transcended the genre. It became like it was a 70s political thriller and comic book movie all at the same time. The way they used the story, and the story drove the movie. That's the great thing about this film. The action didn't drive the movie. The story drove the movie. And so it belongs up there in the top 10. All right, we got 3 films left in what I would call the upper echelon. And one of them, I don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with this one's place on the list. It is, in my opinion, easily the best film of, not the best comic book film, the best film of 2017. And that is Logan. Look, Hugh Jackman, I'm not going to say it's better than, but I'm going to say Hugh Jackman gives Heath Ledger a run for his money in the greatest performance in a comic book movie of all time, with him playing Logan in there. And right on his heels would be Patrick Stewart. I honestly don't know whether Hugh Jackman or Patrick Stewart's performance was better. I mean, they both, I think, gave the performances of their careers in this movie. And these are 2 impressive careers with Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman. To me, it's laughable, in my opinion. I mean, you may have a different opinion, totally respect that. But I'm just saying, just from my perspective, it's laughable to even consider that Logan isn't the best film of the year so far. And a lot of people will discount it because it's a comic book film. They should not. It is a brilliant film and absolutely belongs in the top 10. All right, 2 films left. The next one up that I believe filling that 9th spot, again in no particular order, but is Sam Raimi's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think there was a period of time when The Amazing Spider-Man 2 could have legit been considered the best comic book movie of all time. Now, a lot of comic book movies have come out since then, obviously, but I do think there was a period of time you could have made an argument that Spider-Man 2 was the best comic book movie ever made. The action, the characters, the villain, Dr. Octopus in this movie. Maybe before Heath Ledger's Joker came along, well, you still got Magneto, but Dr. Octopus belongs right up there, especially the way he's portrayed in this movie. And because I remember thinking, come on, Dr. Octopus, it's going to look cheesy as hell. It's going to be stupid. It's going to be childish. What a waste. Why waste a sequel like that? And he turned out to be awesome. So, yes. All right, now the 10th movie I have on my list is going to be divisive. I know a lot of you guys are not going to agree with this one. Probably even more of you will disagree with it than my inclusion of Man of Steel on this list. I'm just curious. I'm going to take a few seconds here. I'm going to look over the chat board. Tell me what you think my 10th film is on this list. Tell me what you think the 10th film on this list is. Now, I'm going to have to wait about 20 seconds because there's a little bit of a delay between when I actually say something and when it plays over on the board here. Okay, so I'm starting to say it now. I'm going to look for it here. Some people saying Green Lantern. No, Green Lantern is not the 10th film on my list. Elektra, no, Elektra's not. Guardians of the Galaxy. Nope. Although Guardians of the Galaxy is an amazing, awesome movie, it is not 10th on my list. Steel. Somebody's saying Steel. Nope, not Steel. Batman Begins. Nope, I love Batman Begins, but it's not Batman Begins. Tank Girl. Nope, not Tank Girl. Elektra X2. X2 is a great movie. Did not quite make it up there, although I'm just kind of shocked that it didn't. Some of you have got it, though. Here it is. The movie. Again, this is because it just, for me, on every level worked and is a really misunderstood and underappreciated film. I saw this movie 7 times in theaters. It's the first Thor movie. The first Thor movie from a narrative perspective, directed brilliantly by director Kenneth Branagh. This is a story, again, that transcends the comic book genre. At its core, it's not a movie about a superhero. It's a movie about a guy. It's a movie about family issues. It's a movie about a father and 2 sons and a rivalry between brothers. The story of Loki, really, it's almost Shakespearean, the story of Loki. He was born the son of an enemy race, taken and raised as his own by Odin, not knowing that was he not only not Odin's legitimate son, but he was the son of the enemy king, and he has all these powers and abilities that even he didn't know about, and that messes with him, and he still loves Odin, but hates his brother, but loves his brother. To me, what Kenneth Branagh did with that movie is drastically underappreciated. Now, I know a lot of people would rather put like the first Iron Man, maybe Guardians, maybe X-Men 2, up on that, maybe Batman Begins. But I really think, and I'm going to stand by it, I think Thor, the first one, and granted Thor 2, major step down, but that first Thor, directed by Kenneth Branagh, I think it belongs on my list. So, once again, here is to me what is the upper echelon of the greatest comic book movies of all time. The 10 films are, again, in no particular order. We got Man of Steel. We've got Deadpool. X-Men Days of Future Past. We've got Deadpool. We've got The Dark Knight. We've got Avengers. We've got Civil War. We've got Captain America Winter Soldier. We've got Logan. We've got Spider-Man 2, the one by Sam Raimi. And finally, finishing off, we've got Thor. So those are the 10 films that I would say are in the upper echelon. So that's my list, guys. Now, I know, again, all of you will have different lists. That's great. What's really cool, too, I remember when I sat down and thought, okay, I'm going to put my list together. And I think just in my head, I naturally assumed like 6 or 7 of them would be Marvel films because, I mean, everybody thinks right now the MCU kind of rules the movie world right now. And I didn't purposefully put any MCU films on it. I didn't purposely leave any MCU films off. But it's kind of interesting to see that despite its dominance right now, less than half of these films were MCU films. We got, which ones are MCU films by Marvel? We had Avengers, Civil War, Captain America, Civil War. Was it just 3? And Thor. So there's 4 of them. So there are 4 Marvel films, 3 Fox films are on there with Deadpool, Logan, and X-Men Days of Future Past, 2 DC films with Dark Knight and Man of Steel, and 1 Sony film. And I just think it's really kind of cool. I didn't purposefully include any studio. I didn't purposely exclude any studio. I just think it's really cool to step back and see that, holy crap, there's some great filmmaking diversity out there. The fact that I put together a top 10 list and all 4 of the major studios that happen to make superhero films are at least represented. And I don't think a lot of people are going to argue that not the amazing Spider-Man 2, but that Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 shouldn't be on this list. So we got Sony films, Fox films, DC films, Marvel films. I think that's great. Okay, guys, that'll do it for all the email questions I had today. Now I'm going to do the most awkward part of the show, which is where I try to talk and read the chat board at the same time and find questions. So if you got questions or things for the show right now, head on over, start writing in your questions. Again, I got to wait about 15 seconds for me saying it to actually translate onto YouTube because there appears to be a little bit of a delay. And now we will go over the chat board and let's see what you guys are saying. Dominic Angel saying Man of Steel is the DCEU. Yeah, it's the movie that got it all started. It's great. Liam Bomb Attack is saying Dredd is great. Dredd is great. I love the Carl Urban Dredd. I think that movie, again, I think that's a movie that belongs in that next tier. That belongs up there with Wonder Woman, with Doctor Strange, with X-Men 2. I would put Dredd up there. I love that movie, Dredd. It's fantastic. Let's see. Eric Kirby writes, hey, John, will you be at the Stan Lee Kamikaze Convention this October? Well, interesting. It's not called the Stan Lee's Kamikaze anymore. I believe they changed the name of it to the LA Comic-Con. It might actually be called Stan Lee's LA Comic-Con. Will I be there? I don't know. I'll probably put in an appearance one day just to go down there and see all this stuff. But I don't know if I'm like going to be there all 3 days, or I don't know that I'm going to do any panels or anything like that. So, but we will see. Okay, what else we got here? Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3. Alex Favors is asking, what do you think of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3? That's the last episode. Dude, I do Game of Thrones reviews. Go on my YouTube channel. Look on the main page. I got a Game of Thrones playlist. I've got my review up there, so you can go check that out. Hunter X writes, did Ben Affleck really sign a trilogy deal with DC? No, he didn't. Hey, John, about the... That's not to say that he won't. That's not to say things can't change and that he won't. But as of right now, no, he did not. Let's see. Opinion on The Flash Season 3. I like The Flash Season 3. You know, I know a lot of people had their reservations about it. The way they use the Savitar character and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I don't disagree with anybody about that. All I know is that it worked for me. I liked The Flash Season 3 personally. Stephen Rowley is asking, what is my favorite food? Easy, Italian. Well, I am Italian. So yes, Italian food is my favorite. No love for Watchmen? Nope. Look, Watchmen, half the people in the world think that movie sucks and half the people love it. You can't have a movie up there if half the people in the world thinks it's terrible. I happen to be one of those people that I didn't quite like it. I didn't think it sucked. I didn't think it was great, but I think Watchmen could have been and should have been a bunch better. Alan Gonzalez Cadorova, are you a Sith or a Jedi? I'm Jedi. I know a lot of people think it's cool to be the dark side and whatever, and that's cool. I'm Jedi. But it's funny, in World of Warcraft, I play Horde. So I was an undead mage for the Horde when I play World of Warcraft. So yeah, when I'm World of Warcraft, I play dark side. When I play my Star Wars games, I usually play the light side. Jeffrey Taylor writes, thoughts on the first look of Domino in Deadpool 2? I like the look. It's a cool look. I want to actually see it in action. I want to see more than just a still picture. So I'm going to reserve any real judgment on it until I actually see a clip or something and see how the character is being portrayed. But as far as the look goes, I'm perfectly good with the look. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh my God, everything has to look exactly like the way it looked in the comic book. I'm not one of those people. Just basically get it. And if you basically get it, you're free to take some liberties as long as the character comes out good, then I'm happy. So yeah, I'm happy with it. It's fine. Seth Owen writes, will Lord and Miller be credited as the main directors for Han Solo? Nobody can make that decision except for the Directors Guild of America. So a lot of people think the studio, when there's a shift or a change or some dispute, a lot of people think the studio gets to name who the director is. No, they don't. When it comes to who gets credit as director, the studios do not get to pick that. That has to go to the Directors Guild of America. The Directors Guild of America will make a ruling and then they'll decide. But the Directors Guild of America won't do that until they fully see how much the Ron Howard version is different from what the Lord and Miller one is. And then they will decide. So right now I have no guess. If I had to guess right now, I'd say they'll probably get co-directing credit, Lord and Miller and Ron Howard. But again, it's up to the Directors Guild of America, and we are probably months away from getting their decision on that. So anyway, yeah. Let's see here. What about 300? See, 300 is a great movie, but I don't, and even though it's based on a graphic novel, I don't consider it a comic book movie. Because look, when I think of a comic book movie, and I think when most people in the world think of a comic book movie, we don't think of standalone one-shot graphic novels. We think of ongoing characters who have been around for decades. That's what we generally think of. Characters who have ongoing comic series, they're superheroes and they've been in films or they've been in running series and all that kind of stuff. That's what the vast majority of the world thinks of when they think of a comic book movie. I mean, Road to Perdition is technically a comic book movie because it was based on a graphic novel. But you wouldn't put Road to Perdition in a top comic book films of all time. If you want to do a different list of top films based on graphic novels, then that's a different list altogether. But I wouldn't even say that 300 qualifies for this discussion because it's a kind of a different beast of a different color. All right. Let's see. Last question today comes from Bang Bang Kill, who writes, do you play Xbox or PlayStation? Honestly, for the most part, I don't play console. I'm mostly a PC gamer, honestly. What I have in my living room is an Xbox One. So when I do play console, I play Xbox. I've also got a Nintendo system. That's true too. But mostly when I do play console, which is rare, I just run in my living room and I pick up, it's an Xbox I have. I don't have a PlayStation. So, but mostly I'd say 99% of my gaming is done on my PC. So I'm a PC gamer mostly. All right, guys, that will do it for me for this installment of the John Campea podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Remember, guys, if you like these videos, you like having these videos around, do me a favor, click the thumbs up button, leave a comment, share this video or some of my other videos around on your Facebook or YouTube page, whatever. That would help me out a lot. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow me right here on Twitter, on Facebook, at John Campea. It's easy to follow me there. So that will do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. And until next time, bye-bye.